What you just saw is one of the public service announcements that has been created by the College Access Challenge Grant. You heard Trish talk about the availability of these for your use, and so USG campuses, if you wish to attract adult learners, we have a whole series of PSAs for you. My name is Mary Ellen Dahlman, and I have the privilege of working with Trish Patterson as co-director of the Adult Learning Consortium. With me this afternoon are Phil Gunter, who is Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Valdosta State University, a campus that piloted and has spearheaded work with prior learning assessment, one of the elements of reaching adult learners. Also at the table, Alan Jackson. Alan has agreed on behalf of Georgia Perimeter College, another leader within USG, to help us understand the initiatives to reach students who are adult, but who study less than full-time, so part-time enrollments. And then, last but not least, Billy Wells from North Georgia College and State University, Vice President for Executive Services. Did I get that right? Affairs, Executive Affairs, sorry. Who will speak with us about the draft plan for outreach to military students. I'm going to speak first, and then we're going to move from presenter to presenter without me hopping up and down and reintroducing. If we look at the University System of Georgia's enrollment, and we look at the average age for USG institutions, which is the green bar here, the average age of undergraduate enrollment, 23.9 years. Some campuses, the research ones and the regional universities, have average ages of less than the average. State colleges, the state universities, 24.3. But all of the others, which are huge enrollment numbers, our state colleges and our two-year campuses, have as their average student, by definition, by our definition, adult learners. And we're currently using for adult learners a population of age 25 and older. Okay. Who are these people? Our goal within the Adult Learning Consortium is to increase the number of adults who earn college degrees. And I have on the slide some data about how the state of Georgia compares in general to academic completion across the United States. In the US, the average number of adults with less than a high school diploma is 15%. Here's one of those where we wish we didn't do well. We are 2% above the national average in terms of numbers of adults with less than a high school diploma. Those with a high school diploma, including a GED, again, we wish we weren't excelling, but we are. We are at 30% compared to 29% for the US. These two sets of data often are referred to as our low-hanging fruit, maybe peaches because of our state. The target population, particularly those with some college or an associate degree, but not yet the baccalaureate or not yet the associates, 26%, 28%. And college graduates or more, again, Georgia is behind the US. So when we look at how many adults have some college or associate's degree, that 2% in terms of our state population could give us another 193,000 students Those with college degree or more, those we want, we're again behind 1%, 96,876 more. Well, if you actually add the low-hanging fruit, we could more than double the enrollment of university system. Because between those two populations, we more than reach the 290,000 thereabouts currently enrolled in undergraduate programs in system. So in 2008, the Adult Learning Consortium began some work that has resulted in a series of agreements and principles, the first being that students shouldn't be run all over our campuses looking for how to get enrolled. There ought to be an access point. On the Dalton campus, it's called the Adult Learning Steering Committee. At Fort Valley, it's called the Adult Learning Consortium Steering Committee. At Southern Poly, they have two different committees. At Valdosta State University, they've actually formed a new division, the Division of Adult Academic Degree Completion and Professional Development Programs. Point of the matter is, how does an adult enter your institution? Is there a one-stop shop? That's something we do within the consortium. We also understand that adults, even though they seem very focused, needed a mechanism to explore their own career goals, their own academic realities, and so we developed within the consortium a course called PLA 2000, Prior Learning Documentation. Valdosta State, Georgia Southwestern, Fort Valley, SPSU has made it through at this point, I think. One of the things that the consortium also does, rather than operating in a vacuum, is to adhere to the national standard for adult and experiential learning, and that's a group called CALE. We all adhere to that, and it's one of those things that if you want to explore, CALE is the place to go to look at adult learning principles. This is a very interesting one. It came later. These are in order in which we adopted them. If any one of our campuses within the consortium it assesses or transcripts a course, the other members of the consortium accept that course unquestioningly. So if Macon State's IT, with all that you have in place, Alex, with your 2-year, 4-year transfer articulation agreements, same with Southern Poly with the transfer articulation. Now that Macon State is a member of the consortium, if that course, transcripted by Macon State, comes to another member of the consortium, it is accepted just as that course would be. You heard students asking for seamless articulation. We are, with Billy here at the panel, moving clearly in the direction of being more friendly towards our military. And so being a member of the adult learning, it didn't come up, where's SOC? There it is. Being a member of the Service Members Opportunity Colleges, or SOC, there was actually a SOC convening March the 14th, campuses that attended. The people from the Service Members Opportunity Colleges explained to us how we become more military friendly by having our courses be recognized and being collaborative with the efforts on base. We have 2 other initiatives, and these are also speak to what the students asked us for. In order to keep the curriculum in the control of the faculty, we have within the Adult Learning Consortium a system where we have a course match model, i.e., if there's a course, the student must first take the national exam for that course. And so Pam Kerouac, thank you again being mentioned. Outside the door, there is a great deal of information provided by the College Board about national exams, which you know is CLEP. If there are departmental challenge exams, students must take those. If there's a portfolio assessment, it only comes after the exam opportunities and avenues have been exhausted. Probably the most significant statement made by a student this morning was, a young woman said, "I was given permission to take 2 CLEPs." How many of you require students to get permission to to take an AP course? Oh, how many of you are trying to enroll students from AP? Oh, and yet, the College Board, the same psychometricians, the same oversight, are the academic developers of those same exams, and the American Council on Education is the same body that makes decisions about what ought to be an average passing score. So we don't force students to ask permission to take a CLEP. It shortens time to degree, it's cheaper, it gets those adults into the courses that they're interested in and more capable of engaging with than anything else we can do. One more thing we've done is that if the ACE, the American Council on Education, recommended a cut score, now all consortium members say whatever ACE recommends, which is a C or better. Please don't get me wrong, if your campus requires a B or better, you may require that, but within the consortium, ACE cut score is ACE cut score. So any CLEP, ACE recommended cut score, once it's transcripted at Gainesville State, students don't have to send a second score. Seamless transfer and articulation with the testing. I'm going to show you a video and then turn this over to Phil Gunter to talk about prior learning assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Dahlman. Have any of you ever stood up here and looked out at this group? This is the most serious group I have ever seen in my life. Good grief, y'all. Maybe it's just that it's late. I took an assessment, not a prior learning assessment recently. It was Are You a Redneck assessment, and I knew that I would pass it because I grew up in Tennessee and have lived more years in Georgia than in Tennessee. So for example, if you think a 7-course meal is a bucket of KFC chicken and a 6-pack, you're probably a redneck. If you have 5 empty McDonald's bags in the floorboard of your truck, you're probably a redneck. If Jack Daniels is one of your most admired people list persons, then you're probably a redneck. And my original material is, if you think that a PowerPoint is your dog holding the birds for 30 minutes, you're probably a redneck. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I had to come up with something to fill that little void today. Unfortunately, the better half of this presentation, you met this morning, Susan Bates, and Susan just completed her work with us and now is out serving the medical community, which we're very, very proud of, and couldn't stay with us today. So I'll try to fill in some of her pieces, but the real nuts and bolts are in the true life experience that she talked about this morning. And the bottom line for her that appeared to be very important, and I don't know if you caught it, but is that through prior learning assessment, she was able to accelerate completion of her degree program in 6 months. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but I think you could hear in her voice that was a big deal for her. So what I'm going to try to do is give you a little example of what we're doing, have been doing at Valdosta State, and hopefully you'll come and visit us and we'll fill in the pieces there. In about 2008, several of you were involved, as we were, in the process of developing online courses for complete degree completion of education degrees through distance learning. The piece of that I bring into this brief presentation is that all of those degrees had to be collaborative in nature. In one case, Valdosta State collaborated with David Rock and the people at Columbus State, and with Cindy Chance, the dean at Georgia Southern. It's interesting that none of the three people who participated in that are any longer deans in the state of Georgia. So maybe it wore us out, I'm not sure. We certainly learned, though, one important variable is we could collaborate on degrees across universities. And I will not say that it was easy, but it's possible. The other thing that we did in 2008 at Valdosta State University is we brought consultants in from, as Dr. Dahlman indicated, the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning from CALE. Their number one standard, or standard one, if you go to their website, as she suggested, is that credit or its equivalent should be awarded only for learning and not experience. So we had to learn how to give credit for learning and not experience. We did that. We've developed 27 courses in 11 different subject areas at Valdosta State University. The other effort that we have going on at Valdosta State is dealing with awarding credit in our Workforce Education Development Program. This program is primarily for workforce members who are interested in joining the teaching force in our schools. And we've been very, very fortunate that since 2008, we've been able to graduate 89 people in our workforce development program, and all of those have been impacted by prior learning assessment. So far this year, 2011-2012, 34 students have generated 391 credits through PLA at Valdosta State University. Primarily, those are in the area of nursing, is our most important area that we work in, but also in criminal justice, sociology, American Sign Language are some of the other areas that are highly impacted. As you can see from these numbers, we haven't broken the bank in awarding credits through prior learning assessment. But I think what we have done in the few years that we've been working in that area is that we've been able to develop a process as well as some examples of what can be done. I think the next step that we're hopefully ready to engage in is how to ramp up and increase the number of students that we're working with, the number of credits that we're able to award, and the number of students that we can enter into degree programs and degree program completion. In 2010, to this effort, and again, Dr. Dahlman did mention this, we developed a division for adult degree completion in military programs. I think what that does, it articulates our commitment to adult learners at Valdosta State University very clearly, in that they know where to go, they know where to begin the process. As many people have said this morning, you got to know where to start, and you got to know where the information is. So we have these big signs across our campus that say AMP on them. So if you want to know what AMP means, it's Adult and Military Programs, and it's pretty hard to miss. And so we're very, very proud of that effort that has begun there. I think overall, there are three things that we've learned that probably most of you all already knew, but many of the people who live in South Georgia are kind of like me. They're a little on the redneck side, and so we're kind of slow learners. But one of the things that we've learned is that many adult learners have very different needs than the traditional college students that come to our programs that are 17 and 18 years old. They're very different people. I think Stan Jones pointed that out very clearly this morning. Many of the learners have gained a wealth of knowledge through medical training, through military training, through professional development within criminal justice systems, and through technical preparation. And much of the learning gained in pre-degree work is at least as valuable, if not in some cases more valuable, than what we're going to give them in degree completion. I do believe that out of our experience since 2008, we're ready to scale up, and we're ready to ramp up at Valdosta State University. And I hope that the next time that we have a summit here, we have, instead of 20 people sharing a minute with us, we have 200 people sharing their success stories in completing their degrees and the success that it brings to their lives. So, thank you, Dr. Paul.
Thank you. So get this to work. I'm Alan Jackson. I'm the Vice President. Oh, sorry about that. Vice President for Academic Affairs at Georgia Perimeter College. I'm here to talk about adult learners. As a Vice President for Academic Affairs, I found this data to be very important. Although I will say to Tim, who I've gotten to know a little bit, if we could replace the word poetry with metrics, the professor of English in me would be very happy. But that's all I want to say about that. Okay. If you look at Georgia Perimeter College in fall 2011, one out of every 4 GPC students was a part-time adult learner. Learner should be on the end of that, by the way. We have a lot of people who are part-time adults. So maybe myself included sometimes. The largest age group of part-time adult students is 30 to 39. A higher proportion of part-time adult students. Is there a feedback? I'm sorry. Are female than in proportion of the overall college population, which I don't think is surprising. The race ethnicity breakdown of part-time students is roughly proportional to the overall college, which you'll see in a minute. 54% of our part-time adult learners receive need-based financial aid, which is about the same as the college-wide average. And of the 1,011 part-time adult students who entered GPC in fall 2005, by fall 2011, about 11% had graduated. 37% roughly had transferred to a four-year institution. 10 had earned a bachelor's degree by that point, and 4% had earned a graduate degree, so it's pretty good. And here's the breakdown of that on a nice chart the OIRP made for me. I appreciate that. If you look at the part-time adult students by gender, you start to see some differences there and also in race, I think you'll notice. 72% of our part-time adult students are female. The overall is 62, and start to see a trend here, which we've seen, I think, college-wide anecdotally we knew for a while anyway, which is fairly important. Our part-time adult students tend to be more African-American, not significantly so, but somewhat so. So you begin to see a slightly different picture of who we're talking about and some of the issues that they face and that we face in helping them out. If you look at the breakdown, as you said, it's fairly clear. I promise to get through this in 10 minutes, and I'm not going to fail, by the way. Look at the top majors for part-time adult students. This is where we have a problem, and I suspect a lot of you have a problem. Almost 30% of our students consider themselves pre-nursing or nursing. We don't have that many nursing students who actually get into our program. We have an excellent program who I hope will see approval for BSN very soon from the Board of Regents, if any of you are here. Just thought I'd throw that in. It's a really good program. It's really good. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But the pre-nursing, the problem with the pre-nursing is a lot of them can't get in, and you know that. Georgia State knows that. All of you, Dalton, everybody that has a program knows the difficulty of setting high standards and getting all those students who want to come into that program and can't. That means we have a lot of part-time adult students already 25 or older, already not making rapid progress, who find themselves with problems. Most notably, I always think in my mind, is they have anatomy and physiology classes that do not transfer to any other, or to almost very few other programs in the system. We don't have an option for them. You want to take science? We got 2 other science classes for you to take. And that's a problem. You look at 30% of, that's a lot of people. We're talking about hundreds of students who will not get through because of that standard. About 15% are general studies and 14% business administration. Business administration and general studies, not a surprise. Those are the 2 common majors at the associate's level for us. But it's the one of the pre-nursing that really is the one that we have to address and decide how we're going to help these people. Because if we don't, I suspect a lot of them just say, well, look, I got 8 hours here. I'm just going to forget about it, drop out. And they may have decent GPAs. We have students with 3.5 GPAs that can't get into our program, and I'm sure that's true at some of the other schools as well. So as you can see, pre-nursing almost matches all other majors that they face. So it's a big issue for us, and I think for a lot of you. Part-time adult students by semester credit hours, you can see that there seems to be some issues that arise for them as they make their progress. It takes them sometimes a very long time to get to 30-plus credit hours. The GPAs aren't bad. They're doing okay. But the average semesters that they're at the college is a long time. And all those things that were talked about this morning, all those students this morning that we saw, especially the adult learners, the longer it takes, the longer stop-outs they're going to have. And that's true if you're 18, as well as true if you're 28. So that's another critical issue that we've got to address, is how do we get these people to either move faster or be helped. And you've heard some ideas already. Our students that entered in 2005, if you look at the percentage that graduated, you can see that that's, it's a little bit not quite as good as the regular group, not quite as good, many transfer and so on. It is interesting to note, though, that more than have graduated with a graduate degree than the regular population, which suggests to me that we're talking about, and we saw some this morning, some people who are really dedicated and committed. Once they go, and they're not going to be stopped. We also then, if you look at the fall 2005 entering cohort where they transfer, this is not terribly unusual. Georgia State is our #1 school that we transfer to. University of Phoenix doesn't do as well with traditional students, and you can see why. There's a couple of reasons why, by the way, one of which is if you're in the university system and you are primarily an online student, you have very few places to go to study at the four-year institutions. There's only a few schools. So the natural impulse, if you want to stay online, is to go to Strayer or Phoenix or some other place like that. And the options are much more limited for them, I think. Lastly, I want to show you just a couple of slides of a more modest study that was done by our director of adult learning initiatives. She did this before she recently became the director of adult learning initiatives when we joined the consortium. But she did a survey of women 35 and older, and you can see the patterns the same. Most of them are 35 to 44. Most of them are part-time. Most of them had some previous college experience. And why did they get out? The two most reasons, I don't think anybody would be surprised by these. One is family commitments or a lack of family support, and the other is a lack of financial support. And it's tough to stay on when you're part-time. The services that they use the academic advising area, library, tutoring center, computer lab. Only 4% in this survey, and I'm not saying this is typical, we'll find this out soon enough, said that they were a member of a student club. And yet 59% indicated, I don't know if you can read, yeah, I guess you can read that. One actually said they'd like to connect to other female adult students. So there's a desire out there for them to connect, but probably not time or opportunity, and we've not made a way for them to reach that. And lastly, for the data that I want to provide, the advising resources they use, their #1 resource for advising, themselves, which is not the best. It's better than other students, probably. Those are usually the worst. But they don't take advantage of the advising services that we have, which are obviously free. I thought they would have a higher percentage actually of other students, to be honest, because that's usually where we get their bad information about things. So that's just some examples. Finally, a couple of things that I want to mention about actions. Based on what we've seen and what we talked about, there's some things that are clear to us. One is we need better and more advising for this group of students, maybe more career and degree choices. Maybe this is a group that does need that was talked about this morning, that sort of clear path where you tell them exactly what they need to take, whereas an 18-year-old may have some more flexibility. Maybe somebody who's an adult learner maybe needs a little bit more of direction. We need first-year experience courses need to be universal, and I think they need to be transferable. I don't know, that may not be popular, but we have trouble convincing a lot of the faculty at my school that everybody needs to take one of these. Their argument is, well, you know, the really good students don't need this. Well, maybe, maybe not. But our evidence suggests otherwise. We have, it's not on here, it's not related to adult learners, but we have 36% of our students are first generation, most recent data that came out. So yeah, a lot of them do need a first-year experience course of some kind. We know from research that adult learners need more experiential learning in their classes, service learning, experiential learning, other things of that sort, PLA, probably among those things. We need to give them more delivery options, online, hybrids. There's some great technology coming out that some of you heard about, which I don't know if the system's going to pay for it for tele courses or not, but there's some great stuff out there that we could have. And then lastly, we need more support on campus for these students. More clubs, study groups, counselors, some other way to make sure that they connect with each other. Financial support, maybe some scholarships to finish degrees. Maybe not for the whole degree, but for part of the classes to continue on. Some on-campus employment for those of you that have seen this research. That's one of the top retention tools for students is to have a job on campus, and especially for commuter schools like mine and some of yours, where once they leave the campus, they are not going to come back the rest of that day. But if they can work somewhere on campus, that's great. And finally, what we need is more study. We need to know what the triggers are, what the transitions are for these students, so we can reach them and serve them better. Thank you.
I got to tell you, I really like that part-time adult thing. I just don't want my wife to hear that phrase, okay? Because I are one. I'm Billy Wells, Vice President for Executive Affairs at North Georgia College and State University. We've been working with the system folks for a couple of weeks now on a plan for engaging the military. There are a lot of folks here in the audience I think have been part of that. If you'd stand up so people can see you, that way they don't all descend on me for all the questions during the break. Trish, you were part of that. Come on. And there's some in the back. Thanks, guys and gals. I want to talk to you about a couple of things today. I am a former infantry officer, so I like lots of pictures. I'm not much on graphs, and I like it simple. So these slides should be easy to read, and I think you might enjoy a couple of the pictures. First, I want to talk to you briefly about the state of Georgia with regard to the military. We are the 5th largest military population state in the nation. Only Virginia, California, Texas, and North Carolina are ahead of us. Florida was, but with some of the restationing, we're ahead of them now. We have almost 750,000 veterans in the state. Met a couple of them here in the audience today. 2 military colleges, us and Georgia Military College down in Milledgeville. Over 40 ROTC programs. 2 of those programs are ROTC language flagships. That's North Georgia and Georgia Tech. 19% of all the Department of Defense dependent school systems are here in the state of Georgia, doing K through 12 work. And then we have 3 wounded warrior units in Augusta, Fort Stewart, and Fort Benning. So that's one heck of a total of military personnel. A lot of those folks decide to stay here, and so they become part of the workforce, and that's the reason they're important to the Complete College Georgia effort. Post-secondary education in the state, I don't think we fully realize what we have here. If you look at the combined capability of the technical college system of Georgia and the university system, we are, depending on who you look at, we're supposed to be like 5th in the nation in terms of size. Now, that's just the university system. If you combine the 2 systems, similar to what's done in other states, then you come up with your really number 2 in the nation in terms of capability. You're only led by the state of California. That's larger than the university system of Maryland, which really only comes in about 120 or 130,000 students, even when the system is combined with University College, which is their outreach to the military organization. And you're also a lot larger than the University of Phoenix, believe it or not. I didn't mention Troy. I think they're way down at the bottom somewhere. We came up with a couple of definitions with regard to what we're looking at for our work. The first one was a military learner. We opted for a definition that's really kind of in tune with service member opportunity colleges. We included both the active and reserve military personnel, the uniform wearers, the Department of Defense civilians that are associated with that workforce, the family members, and the veterans. And so for us, that constitutes the military learner audience. We decided that, I know you've all heard the word military friendly. That phrase is becoming very much outdated, worn out, and sometimes stands for the amount of money you donated to a publisher who will publish your institution as a military friendly institution. And so we decided to do, and by the way, all this material is draft as we put the plan together until it's fully approved. What we decided to do was to create a university system designation that for those institutions who are willing to meet, and I do mean meet, not on paper, but actually execute, the SOC standards, that you would be designated a military access institution. Because with that particular label, service members would know that they could go to your institution and you would meet the SOC requirements. We know that a lot of the universities in the system are not willing to do the full, I guess you'd say the full meal deal as far as SOC, but they are willing to offer programs that would allow maximum credit in that particular program for military service and military schooling. And so we thought they should be part of that as well. Even if they're not a military access institution as a whole, their programs should be designated as military access programs. So that was a second component, and that came after some good discussions, I think, on how to make sure everybody was in the fight, so to speak. The mission, we worked for a long time to get this boiled down to something very simple and straightforward. And that was to provide the complete range of opportunities to all the military learners, regardless of where they're located. That means whether they're in Germany or Afghanistan or wherever, Korea, or Warner Robins Air Force Base, we'll have something for them, and they can reach out and touch a university system program of one kind or another. We developed a vision statement to go with the mission. I'm not going to go through all of that. You can see the highlighted words, and they kind of tell you what it's all about. Broad range of affordable, keyword affordable, high quality, and accessible programs. That's what it's all about to the military learner. It's got to be portable. In other words, they can go from one institution to another and still retain those credits. The programming needs to be flexible because these folks live a very unpredictable lifestyle, if you will. Learning assessment is a big piece, and all the stuff that the Adult Learning Consortium has done, I think, is going to contribute in a great way to that. And then the maximum program-related credit transfer. That is really key. What you don't want is some soldier, sailor, airman, Marine having to repeat the same course every time he changes duty station. All you do is you add to the matriculation process for that individual. These are the key tasks. Notice the first one is around the idea of data, or data, depending on where you're from. The problem here is we don't really have much. In all of our institutions, we can't tell who the military folks are other than through things like tuition assistance or GI Bill. We can't tell what component they are. We can't tell whether they're active or reserve. It's very impossible to do. We're working, the system is going to work toward trying to be able to identify all these folks, where they're from and what they're doing. We also need to be able to identify what their component is, because each one of the components has slightly different needs in terms of higher education. Policy is a big deal. You may or may not know that the system policy with regard to the institutional fee, that fee is not payable by tuition assistance. And we all know that really it augments tuition, and that's the intent of it, but the military student will not be able to pay for that out of tuition assistance. Programs and delivery, talked about all that, but those are the key tasks that are associated with the mission. Then we took it a little bit further and determined what is it that we actually need to do to execute those key tasks. And we broke it into 4 areas. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them. One is shaping the environment, and the other are those key operations that you have to execute in order to get the mission done. You'll see a number of things there. I mentioned the data already and the policies. You've got to have some kind of structure to monitor this stuff, to make sure it gets done. There's a lot of preparation for faculty and staff that has to be done. Adult Learning Consortium, same kind of thing, very, very closely related. We need relationships. If you want to reach out to the military, you need to go see them. Now, a lot of our institutions do that. Columbus State, I think, is a good example, as is Valdosta, in terms of their outreach to the local military folks. And some of our institutions, quite frankly, are well postured to continue doing that. And the last one we don't talk much, I don't think about in the system, but marketing is a big deal. If you want to reach out to the military, they've got to know what you're doing. And they've got to know the programs that you have that are targeted to meet their educational needs. If you don't market, they won't know, and they won't come. These are the key operations, the four main things that we think we need to accomplish. You got to have the programs. You need to establish a presence at all the military bases in Georgia. You need to offer online degree options for these folks. And you need some flexible credentialing pathways that we've talked about, several people have talked about previously. We settle on two very different, well, I'd say different, slightly different, significantly different in some ways, options in terms of how to execute the strategy. I call the first one a broad front strategy. And with that one, if you're located and you have a Technical College System of Georgia partner nearby, then you're a prime person or a prime institution to be engaging the military. And like I say, in almost every one of these locations, there is a University System of Georgia institution, and there is a Technical College System of Georgia institution that's right out the back gate. We need to really, really focus on those relationships and building them. Not every institution can meet every need. So what you're going to have to do is you get a strategy where you backfill the rest of the needs through other systems or other institutions in the two systems. And then the other part we talked about is trying to expand the distance learning education offerings, particularly I would offer you with regard to online baccalaureate programs. The systems initiative on eMajor is an excellent example of how that can be done, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the future. The second option was more of a strike to the heart kind of thing, I guess you'd say, and we finished the discussion of the first course of action. I said, okay, so what could we do that would be kind of radically different? And so we had a couple of radicals in the room, and they had some good ideas. The first thing was, let's go after the biggest population. The biggest population in the state of Georgia with regard to the military is Fort Benning. It now has two major former training centers combined into one with both the Armor School and the Infantry School. It's a basic training installation as well. And they have, if you count the military, the uniformed military, reservists, the Department of the Army civilians, all together, you have almost 42,000 adult learners on that installation. That is huge. That's almost twice the number of anywhere else. And probably one of the biggest installations east of the Mississippi. The other kind of interesting idea that came out of the discussions was to establish a joint online university. Both the technical college system and the university system have online offerings. They have a virtual school. We have Georgia on My Line. If you constructed that so that a service member or any adult learner could access the full range of online programs, particularly degree programs, you would have one thing that's just probably more powerful than anything out there, outside probably of the University of Phoenix, and probably one heck of a lot cheaper, or less expensive, excuse me. What I think may happen as we continue our discussions is we come up with a hybrid that kind of combines these two strategies. If you have input, please feel free to contact us. If one of the people who stood up and was recognized earlier, I'm going to give you my contact information as well. Send me a note, give me a call, because we're going to continue to work this thing over the next several weeks. I'm done.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, as my dad would say, and it's actually 5 o'clock here. So, Art? Lynn? Better.
Thank you. Would you join me once again in thanking Mary Ellen and the wonderful panel? Just a few housekeeping items and a couple of updates. First of all, I wanted to announce that as part of Complete College Georgia, our colleagues in the independent sector will be working with us on this plan as well. As many of you have guessed, this is really evolutionary in nature, and we're creating it as we go. And so we're really honored that they'll be part of this as well. And so just wanted to update you on that they'll be Part of that, they're sort of entering into the conversation as we go. I want to thank all of our speakers today. There have been a lot of similarities in the presentations that you've heard. One of the big similarities is that they all reference data throughout. And I was so pleased when I was making the rounds to the group sessions when you broke off this afternoon, because all of you headed right into your data, which is exactly what we had hoped you would do. So that is the prelude to dinner. And so the game plan right now is that you'll take a break, have a chance to go check in at the hotels, change clothes if you want to, come back for dinner. We'll be in the Magnolia Ballroom. It's informal, and then you need to work this evening. And so you'll be with your team times. All of your facilitators will be here, so you'll have access to your facilitators. Hold on just a minute, everybody. And you'll have access to your content people. So one of the things that we'd really encourage you to do is that if you've got questions as you work through, if you have a question, get with your facilitator. Just go ahead and get with your content experts. We'll be available till 10. So take advantage. This team time tonight is really important because we want you to get into your actual planning.